Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 70, The Hockey Show. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Immediately after swearing off men, Fran is asked out by Mike Laveau, the star of the New York Rangers. Before their first date, it is hard to tell who is more excited about this budding relationship, Fran or the Sheffield men. Mike Laveau shows his superstitiousness at and after dinner, prompting Fran to decide to end things, even though he would fit in so well with her family because he has a screw loose. Despite her decision, Maxwell, with the help of Brighton, guilts Fran into continuing the relationship so that they can get tickets to the playoffs. The Rangers drastically underperform, and Mike pins the team's failures on Fran's unlucky red shoes, concluding that she is a jinx. The entire city turns on her. Maxwell gets starstruck when he gets to meet Ron Greschner and fails to get Mike to fix Fran's reputation, so Fran has to take matters into her own hands. She confronts Mike in the Rangers' locker room and scares the crap out of him with a striptease, prompting an on-air apology during the championship game. In the end, Fran abandons her unlucky red heels so that the Rangers can take home the Stanley Cup because it's good for the city. Bernadette, do you have anything you want to add?
No, you did a great job.
Thank you. Would you like to take us to scene one?
Yes, so we are opening at a sports bar. Fran and Val are there, and Val's lamenting. We're the only two girls in this sports bar, and no one's hitting on us. What's girl got to do? And of course, Fran's like, just, watch this. She stands up, and she's standing in front of the TV. So, of course, every guy starts throwing popcorn, booing at her because she's covering the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she sits down and she tells Val, I'm giving up on men. I'm content. I have 3 beautiful children, gorgeous house, a great guy. I have no sex life, but I can hold out longer than Lisa Marie. And then Val is like trying to get her attention. Fran, there's a gorgeous guy coming over here. And, Fran's still going on about how she's giving up on men. And then who appears by her side, kneeling next to her, but Mike Laveau from the New York Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And he, of course, asks her out, like, I don't know how he starts, but she says, yes, I would.
So he says, hi, I'm Mike Laveau. I play with the New York Rangers. Would you like to go out with me sometime? Yes, I would.
Okay. And then he says, Friday. And she says, Thursday sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Says, I need the address. And she's like, get a pen. So he
Mm-hmm.
goes off, presumably to get a pen. And Val turns to, says to Fran, I thought you said you were going to live like a nun. I was imagining you climbing every mountain, fording every stream. And Fran says, well, I followed every ranger till I found my dream.
Yep.
And then Val, Mike's not back yet. Val notes that they're out of popcorn, and Fran says, here, let me. And she stands up with the bowl and she tries to catch the popcorn as all the guys start throwing popcorn at her again for covering the TV.
Right.
You have anything to add to that opening scene?
The only thing I want to note is that when he asks her out for Friday, she says Thursday sooner. This is a move we've seen her pull before in the episode, an offer she can't refuse. That's what she does with Frankie's father, Tony Tottori. So just wanted to point that out.
Nice. Can you take us to the next scene?
Sure. So Fran and Maggie are coming downstairs, and Maggie wants to know how come her dad won't let her go out on school nights, but Fran can, go out when she's supposed to be working. And Fran, is this one of those times where we should discuss her attire? I kind of think it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So Fran is in a floor length, like silver shimmery gown with diagonal sleeves, like over the neck, over the like breastbone to the
like almost a halter, but not.
Exactly.
Like, it's like you said, more of a diagonal cut.
Yeah. And it's very sparkly, very shimmery. Her hair is up. She looks very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Fran explains to Maggie that, honey, I'm an adult. I don't need to ask your father for permission. Oh, by the way, I left the shower running. I'm in there if he asks. And so Maxwell's coming out from the back hallway, and he asks for Miss Fine, and Gracie starts running down the stairs. She's in the shower. And then, of course, she's not in the shower. She's standing in the foyer. And Fran says to her, oh, sweetie, it's okay. I shouldn't have asked you to lie for me anyway. I should have coughed up the extra $2 for Brighton. And then she turns to Maxwell and says, like, look, listen, Mr. Sheffield, if you're going to try to talk me out of going out tonight, he's like, are you kidding? With Mike Laveau of the New York Rangers, go like this. And he like helps her fix her teeth, make sure there's no lipstick on them. And she says, oh, gee, who knew that I could get the night off just by going out with a famous athlete? Well, so much for dating Jewish guys. And Maxwell's very excited. He's like, I can't believe we're dating Mike Laveau. Well, I mean, you are, but I get to meet him. We talked on the phone and he called me pal. And
he's like very pleased with that.
He's so pleased. He's totally like, I want to say fangirling. But I'm not sure what the, okay,
Yeah,
I'm not, I can use
fanboying.
that verb. Okay, I was going to ask, does it become fanboying? I'm not sure. So yeah, he's fanboying over Mike Laveau. And so Fran comments, well, you know, he thinks I'm lucky for him. Right after I met him, he scored 4 times. And Maxwell and I think Niles are both there. They look at her like, you know, scandalized. She's like, on the ice. And so Niles chimes in, I must say, I haven't seen you this excited in a long time. And Fran's like, well, I don't often get to go out with a celebrity. And Niles is like, no, I was talking to Gidget, pointing at Maxwell. And Maxwell says to him, oh, do shut up. Take that pate back to the kitchen. Put out some real man food, like ribs or hot wings. And like his voice changes. I tried to mimic it, but I'm not doing a great job. He lowers his voice. He tries to like man up, I guess.
Yeah.
And so Cece comes in as Fran's like putting the finishing touches on her, you know, attired, looking in the mirror or whatever. And she looks at Fran's dress. Oh, Nanny, fine. Another fabulous gown from the Reynolds Wrap collection. Maxwell, what would you say if I waltzed out of here for a date at 5:00? And Niles responds, I'd say see you at 5:30. And so the doorbell rings and Brighton starts running down the stairs. Mike Laveau is here. And Maxwell and Niles, everyone's racing to the door and they're like fighting over each other. Maxwell sort of like tries to make himself bigger by like sticking his arms out horizontally and like preventing anyone from getting around him. And Fran's like, will you look at yourselves acting like a bunch of idiots over some guy? Believe me, it's cuter on me. And so she actually opens the door and she's greeted with, how's my lucky charm? And she responds, oh, magically delicious. And Mike Laveau picks her up and hugs her. And then, you know, the men get to sort of introduce themselves. So Maxwell introduces himself as Max Sheffield. This is my son, Brighton. And Mike shakes his hand. What's happening, partner? And Brighton squeaks, partner, sure beats your pal. Yeah. And then Niles asks, would you like a drink? Oh, no, thanks, boss. And Niles is very excited by this nickname, boss. Kick both your butts. And Fran's like, oh, now let's not fight over who has the best nickname. And Mike Laveau says to her, come on, let's go, sexy thing. And she turns back to the men. Sexy thing, we have a winner. She has her coat on and they walk out to go on their date. Do you have anything you want to add?
Nope, you did a great job.
Thank you. Would you like to take us to their date?
Yes. So we are, I guess, first of all, I would note we see the New York skyline and then we end up in a restaurant. And Mike Laveau is telling Fran, you look gorgeous tonight. And she's like, thank you. We've said that 7 times. And this is our first kind of look into a superstition, right? Because he outright says, you know, I have to say it 7 times, you know, I'm a hockey player, I'm superstitious. And he needs to say it 7 times a night, basically.
Otherwise, it's bad luck.
Yeah, it's bad luck. Because again, superstitious. So again, he's explaining to Fran, hockey players are like that. You know, if they're on a winning streak, he doesn't change his underwear. She's not really pleased with that. She even makes the comment, oh, you should find another ritual.
If you're looking to get lucky.
Yes, exactly. And um again, Fran though is, despite this initial conversation, still saying, how, oh, it's great, I was just about to give up, but I was able to find such a sweet, wonderful, normal guy. And then she like goes to clink
The
like
glasses.
the glasses, and like so they clink, clink again, clink. And every time he clinks it, she like clinks it back. And he's like, no, it has to be odd. And she's like, believe me, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the waiter comes out and he says, compliments of the chef. And he puts down this platter and a seafood platter. Like, Fran is thrilled. And
Uh-huh.
she goes for it, but Mike immediately freaks out. There's 13 shrimp. And she's like, no, no, watch this. And she like puts the shrimp in her mouth. Now there's 12 shrimp. And
Mm-hmm.
he's freaking out. He immediately gets up and like performs like a modified Heimlich maneuver on her. And she not so gracefully spits up the shrimp. Um and Mike's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but 13 is so unlucky." And Fran kind of makes a comment, not as unlucky as that woman with the shrimp down her bust, because apparently that shrimp ended up,
In her cleavage.
yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a relatively short scene, but we see already how superstitious Mike is. Do you have anything to add to that scene?
Just one thing. So as he's like explaining that he's superstitious, Fran says that she doesn't believe in superstitions herself,
Yes.
especially the one about catching the bridal bouquet.
Yes, she doesn't
P.S.
need potpourri until 2005.
Correct. That was the only thing I wanted to add. So I'll take us to breakfast.
Yes.
Okay, so now it's breakfast the next morning, and Fran's not there. It's just the Sheffield family and Niles. And Brighton is talking about how the seats Mike Laveau is going to get them are going to be right on the ice, and that they're going to be so close that they're going to be able to smell the players. And he adds, finally, I know someone that's got some pull. And Maxwell doesn't take well to this. He says, excuse me, but I have gotten us some front row seats in my time. And Brian's like, yeah, but we're talking about smelling the Rangers, not Carol Channing.
Hmm.
And Maxwell's like, well, keep it up. I could have asked Niles. And Niles, muttering under his breath, says, yes, just like I could have made you a new waffle when that one fell on the floor.
Hmm.
Well, in comes Fran, and she's in another bathrobe, as usual. And I think Maxwell comments to her, you got in late last night, didn't you? And she's like, I got home at 12, but I wasn't allowed in until an odd number. She says to Niles, load me up. And Max is like, wait a minute. Why are you eating like someone that doesn't have a boyfriend? You screwed up our date, didn't you? Um, and he asks her, did you pick off his plate? And she's like, oh, come on. What do you think? I was born in a barn. Meanwhile, she's picking off his plate.
Yes.
And she's like, look, I know you loved him, but you're young. You'll meet someone else. And Max was like, okay, so is it officially over, possibly over, or not over until I get my front row seats? And she's like, Max, Mr. Sheffield, the man has a screw loose, which is going to make it harder to break up with him since he fits so well in my family.
Hmm.
And Maxwell does not act like himself a lot in this episode, but here
No.
he like whines and he's like, this is so unfair. You can't break up with him. You promised to take us to the playoffs.
Yeah. And he's like full on pouting.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not a good look on him. It's
Nope.
also not his normal look. Um, and Fran's just like, you know what? You're all nuts. That's it. You know what? I just give up on men. I don't care if I ever get married. Meanwhile, my mother just had an urge to jump out the window and she doesn't know why.
Hmm.
Um, and Maxwell doesn't let it go. He's not willing to, just watch the game on TV. He says to her something like, you're right. It's your life. Even though those are the hardest tickets to come by at the moment. And well, hockey is the only thing my boy and I have bonded over in the last couple of years. And he like, wraps his arm around Brighton, who's clearly 110% in on guilting Fran into this. And Fran says, oh, I can't believe you would stoop so low as to use guilt on me. All right, fine. If the game means that much to you, I will go. I just have to tell Grandma Yetta that I'm not going to take her to the movies. There's always next week, God willing. And she walks out. And then Maxwell says, oh God, now I feel terrible. She pops back in. Amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have anything you want to add?
No, you did a great job.
All right. Would you like to take us to Madison Square Garden?
Yes, so we are at Madison Square Garden. It's time for the big hockey game. And Maxwell's sitting on, they're like in the second or third row.
Mhm.
And Maxwell's on the aisle. Then there's Fran, and then there's Brighton. Everyone around Fran, decked out in hockey gear, like, supporting the team, including Maxwell and Brighton. And Fran, again, a little bit just, I feel like we need to talk a little bit
Yes.
about her outfit.
Yes.
Like, she is not wearing hockey stuff.
No.
From where we see her right now, she's sitting down. And is it like she's wearing red and black? Is it like a red?
It's like a red plasticky jacket with a zipper
Yeah,
over a black skirt, and then under the jacket is a black and white horizontal striped turtleneck.
yes.
And
Thank
she's
you.
wearing her usual black tight, not not totally opaque, but sort of see-through black tights.
Yes, yes. Um, and so she, Maxwell's very much into this game. And he's even yelling out to Mike, "Hello, pal." And oh, he's blowing a kiss. Oh, okay. And then Maxwell blows a kiss to and Fran points out, pretty sure that wasn't wasn't for you.
Pal, I
Um,
think that was meant for sexy thing.
yes, yes, indeed. And then Maxwell points out to her that she's on the jumbotron, and so of course she, because before she's on the thing, she feels bad because this is kind of leading Mike on, right? That she likes him. And so, but now that she's on the Jumbotron, she says, "Love you, Mike. Good
Uh-huh.
luck from Sexy Thing." And then Maxwell kind of pops his head into the frame, "And pal."
Mm-hmm.
And then Mike skates over and beckons Fran to come down. And he said, asks, "Kiss me for luck, Fran." And everyone around goes, "Fran, Fran, Fran, Fran." And I kind of like put this whole next thing together just because it's so quick.
I did too.
But she's like kind of like to herself, like a simple Jewish girl from New York City having my name chanted at Madison Square Garden. What does that make me think of? And then there's a flashback, and it's like Fran dressed up like Barbara Streisand,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
weirdly cross-eyed, like very exaggerated, singing The Way We Were.
Yep.
We kind of flash to Niles and the kids watching, like, so Niles and Maggie and Gracie watching from home, and Niles is just like, "What on earth is she doing?" And we see on the screen that Fran's kind of like in her head singing
Yep.
as she is in this flashback.
Yep.
Yeah. So I put all that together, but that's where I stopped the scene. Is that where you stopped it
I
as
did.
well?
I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add to that portion of it?
No, we can talk more about it later.
Okay. Okay.
So we basically are fast forwarding a little in time, and I think it's Brighton's complaining, or Maxwell, one of them is complaining about how the Rangers are getting blown out. This has to be the worst game they've ever played. And then
Yeah.
then Brighton says, you could put Carol Channing in ice skates and she'd do better than this. And Fran's like, oh, come on, don't you worry. His lucky charm is here. There's plenty of time. What inning is this?
Yeah.
Which is funny because hockey does not have innings. Hockey has periods. There are
Yeah.
three of them, not innings. And so, clearly they're not doing well. And so Mike Laveau asks Fran to beckons her to come over. Come here, come here. And she says, coming, baby. And he says to her, baby, something's wrong. It's like there's a curse on me. And she's like, what? He's like, are you sitting in an even numbered seat? Yes. Did you drive around the garden 7 times before you came in? Yes, yes. Are you wearing the same underwear? Does everybody need to know our business? And he's like, okay, okay, all right. Well, try sitting on the aisle, okay? And she's like, oh, all right, okay. And she starts walking to go switch seats. And he calls back to her, Fran, the shoes, the red shoes. And she's like, oh, you like? He's like, no, red shoes are bad luck. She's like, what? The only thing bad luck about these is that I paid retail for them. He's like, no, no, you gotta leave, Fran. You're the reason we're losing. You're a jinx. She's like, what? I am not a jinx. And then the crowd starts chanting, jinx, 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 jinx.
Mhm. Which is like mortifying.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Um, anyway, needless to say, her time at the garden did not go as she anticipated.
Yes. Well, and to the point where security hooks arms underneath her and take her out.
Yes, yes, that is a good addition. Yes. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to take us to the kitchen?
Yes. So right between, like kind of in between, we see the headline on the newspaper, "The Jinx," and it's a picture of Fran from the
Right.
game. So now we're in the kitchen. Obviously, after this has all happened, and Fran is there, Niles, and Sylvia is actually sitting there. And Fran again is upset. She has the paper. Now everyone thinks I'm a jinx. But then she does note that the picture she looks 25 tops.
Mm-hmm.
So at least there's a silver lining there.
And she says she's going to remember the photographer for when she gets married.
Yes, yes. And then like Fran kind of points out like Sylvia, is taking it awfully well. And Sylvia says that, she's heavily sedated. By
Mm-hmm.
the way, your father's disowned you.
Yup.
And she leaves. Um, and Fran then is talking to Niles and she, says this is the kind of thing that could put a person right over the deep end. I might end up like one of those women who talks to themselves and then she kind of mutters to herself, I had the black shoe, yellow shoe, green shoe. Like she had other options, right? Why didn't you go with
Mm-hmm.
the red shoe? And Cece comes in and she's like, oh, Nanny, fine. It must be so hard to be despised by so many people. Um, and of course, Niles is like, oh, don't be so modest.
Mm-hmm.
And Cece comes up with a plan. Nanny, fine, you should lay low. What? Why don't you stay at my place and I'll stay at yours? And she kind of holds out a key to her apartment.
Oh no, she puts the key in Fran's hand.
Yes. Okay. And as she's doing that, she says, your room is next to Maxwell's, right? And Fran corrects her, no, it's near the kids. And so Cece takes back her keys. Okay, cancel that. Um, and in walks like from upstairs, so the side stairwell. Maxwell comes down with a laundry basket full of shoes, and he tells
Mm-hmm.
Fran, "This is a small sampling of shoes. You have lemon yellow, orange, green clover." And it's a similar line of what Fran had been kind of muttering to herself.
Right.
Uh, and she points out, she's the most hated, this is all his fault for making her go. Now she's the most hated person in New York, and she might as well become a mime. Gracie comes in then from the side door, and she announces that Dr. Bort has said it's the last session. And at first, like Maxwell's kind of excited. Oh, you're cured? And I will say, I need to move back a little bit. Cece has left by this point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're cured? And she says, no, she's a Rangers season ticket holder.
Yup.
So then again, Fran's kind of lamenting about this whole situation, but Maxwell's like, well, nobody cares. And Fran points out there are people egging the house from the front door. And then in comes um comes Cece. Uh and she's covered in eggs.
And eggshells and yeah,
Yeah,
very
like you can
unpleasant
tell
looking.
she got and she says to, to Maxwell that he needs to get rid of that woman. And she leaves And then I think
Hold on. She says, Maxwell, you've got to get rid of that woman. There are maniacs outside throwing eggs.
yes, and she like emphasizes eggs in a very interesting way. Eggs. I don't know how to say it, but she leaves. I don't know if Fran's still there, but Niles at this point comes in from the back door,
Yep.
and he has a carton, an egg carton, presumably an empty egg carton. And,
Correct.
and Maxwell looks at him and he tries to look very innocent. And, Maxwell's, though, giving him a look. And Niles goes, "What? Everyone else was doing it." So
Mm-hmm.
we know who targeted Cece at
Oh
the
yeah. Oh yeah.
Anything else you want to add to that scene?
No.
Okay,
So
great.
yeah, Fran, had told Maxwell that, he had to tell Mike Laveau to tell the world that I am not a jinx. So this is Maxwell purportedly going to fulfill that task. He goes to the sports bar and he finds Mike and he says, "Oh, I'm glad I found you. Look, there's something very important I need to ask you." "Whoa, is that Ron Gresham?" And Mike is like, "Yeah, it is. You want to meet him?" And Max is like, "Oh, may I?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. Ron, come here. I want you to meet a friend of mine. This is Maxwell Sheffield." And they shake hands. "How you doing, buddy?" And Maxwell comments to Mike, "He called me buddy." And then Ron asks, "Do you want to play darts?" And Max was like, "Oh, well, Ron, that's very kind of you, but I need to wait. What? On your team?" And Mike's like, "Wait a minute. What do you want? What do you need to talk to me about?" And Max is like, "Oh, it can wait, buddy. So Ron, let's play some darts, huh?" And slaps him real hard on the back. "Oh, sorry, did I hurt you?" And Ron looks at him. When? Like he didn't even notice that Maxwell had touched
Yeah, didn't even feel it.
him. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Needless to say, Maxwell has been waylaid on his journey, on his task.
Yes, indeed.
Anything you
And
want to add, or do you want to?
nope,
Okay, go for it.
because again, we find out to what extent because Maxwell comes home in the kitchen. It's obviously late because Niles is at the refrigerator, like looking like he's going to go to bed.
Hmm.
And he's pouring himself a glass of milk. And Maxwell comes in from the side door to the kitchen from outside saying, "I'm in trouble. I didn't talk to Mike at all, but I had, and he gets kind of the bravado from earlier. I had a couple of beers with the boys." And he explains that there's a picture of Fran, and
Hmm.
they have darts in her nose. And I got a dart in the big hair for 20 points. And he's like proud of himself, right? And
Hmm.
Niles has kind of this like look on his face, kind of like a smile. I don't smirk. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
I'd say a smirk.
and
Like,
we find out why because from behind the counter, Fran pops up wearing a robe. She was obviously there too,
yep.
and she had like a thing of paper towels. So presumably she had like squatted down to get a paper towels before Maxwell had come in. So she's heard everything.
Oh yes.
And and is that why you're laughing at me? I was laughing on the inside, sir. So, anyway, Fran, of course, I think Niles leaves at this point. Is that
Niles
correct?
does leave, and then
So it's
Maxwell is pleading.
yes. And Fran, so yeah, Fran and Maxwell are there, and he of course realizes he's not water, but Fran turns her back to him, which freaks him out, and he's like, "I can't believe I'm saying this, but please talk." And then
Hmm.
Fran starts to kind of cry, dabbing at her face with one of the paper towels. "Don't cry. I can't stand it when you cry. What can I do to make it up for you? I'll I'll buy you something. Just talk to me." And
Anything. Just please say you forgive me.
yes, and then he kind of like salt like crestfallen. I don't know how to say it. He's very sad, kind of droopy. He walks out of the kitchen. And of course, immediately Fran is dries her eyes. She's not actually crying. She pulls out a nail file, starts filing her nails, and says, "Oh, I am like so ready to be married."
Yup.
So yeah, and that's the only thing she like says in that scene,
Correct.
giving him the cold shoulder. Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything else you'd like to
No.
add? Okay.
So clearly Maxwell was not her knight in shining armor here. So instead of being a damsel in distress, Fran is taking matters into her own hands. And she goes down to the Rangers' locker room. And she comes in, she's wearing, this is again one of those times we need to talk about she's wearing a red trench coat that's buttoned or sealed all the way up. She has a belt
Like a
tied.
short
Yes, it's short, it's red. She's wearing black heels and black tights. And so she comes into the locker room and she says, "Excuse me, I'm looking for Mike Laveau." Oh my, and she sees the players are half dressed. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she of course is doing that thing where she like covers her eyes, but then is really peeking through. And
Yes.
then the people who are there realize who she is. It's the Jinx. And they run out. And she says, "Oh, gee, if ESPN wants more women viewers, they should put a few cameras back here." And Mike Laveau comes out and he's in like a midriff showing tank top, tank shirt.
Yeah, it's like a crop top.
Yeah, like I'm trying to figure out how to
Like
describe
you see
it
his midriff. So
exactly.
it's not a high cut crop top, it's low cut, but you see his midriff.
Yeah, you see his belly button, and I think the top of his underwear. Anyway, he's like, "Fran, what are you doing here?" And she says, "Look, you told the entire city that I was a Jinx. Now you better take it back, or I'll." And she like goes, and he says, "What? Hold your breath till you turn blue." And she's like, "No, it's just that the stunk in here finally hit me." And he's like, "Look, I can't take it back. Denying a hex is a hex in itself." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah. I watched Bewitched too." And so she like kind of like puts her hands on his like shoulders near his chest. She's like, "Oh, come on, Mike. There's got to be some way I could change your mind." He's like, "Well, I don't see how. This is a very important game for us tonight." She's like, "Oh, I don't know. Think about it. You're a man and I'm a woman." And she presses play on a boombox she brought in. And I don't know how to describe it, but it sounds like da 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 da.
Yeah. It's very like reminiscent of a striptease.
Yes. And that there's good reason for that because that's what she's going to do. And so she starts stripping for him. First with the coat, and she unties it and she like pulls the
Sash.
this thank you, the sash, in line with the music, and she takes that off. And then we see the open, like her jacket starts to open and we see she's wearing a hockey jersey.
Yeah. And
And
he's
so
really into this right now, right? From the
uh-huh. And I mean, of course he is, right? He's a man, she's a woman, he's attracted to her, like, right? I don't,
beginning.
right? Like, that's what we would expect. Um, and so she starts to take off the jacket and she lowers it, she drops it off her shoulders. And he's saying to her, and then it sort of falls, the back falls a bit. I'm having a little bit of trouble describing this exactly. Like, for our wonderful listeners, if you've not watched this episode before listening to our podcast, feel free to pause here and go watch this scene and then come back.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
you
basically, like the sleeves are still on, but she's
right,
kind
but the back falls and we see the
of,
number.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's wearing 13.
Yep.
Franny, take it off. Take it off. Oh, do you want to see more? And she reaches over to the stuff she brought and she picks up a blue mirror and she looks at herself and fixes her hair. And he says, oh no, not the mirror, Franny, not the mirror. Please, come on, Fran, not the mirror. Don't do that. 7 years bad luck. That's my entire career. Well, she ignores him. She takes the mirror and she throws it over her shoulder. By this point, she has taken off the jacket entirely. And so she's just in a hockey jersey that comes down like maybe a third of the way to halfway down her thighs.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says to him, "Now, before you go," and so he like sits down on the bench and she eventually sits down on his lap and she says to him, "Now, before you go out on that ice," and we see her kick off one of her shoes and she has a red shoe in her hand. He's like, "No, not the red shoe. Franny, the Stanley Cup is riding on this game." And she puts the shoe on And she says, "You ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky tonight?" She takes his face in her hand, makes him look at her. "Well, do you, punk?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you want to add before we continue?
We cut to the living room where the family is watching the game, and we hear that um, the game is currently tied. And um, again, so I'm trying to decipher. I say, the game's tied.
In overtime here in this crucial championship game.
Yes. But then there's an interruption. Mike Laveau has a formal apology.
Well, before that,
Mm-hmm.
so the family is watching the game, and Maxwell asks Margaret, "If you were Miss Fine, what car would you like to drive?"
That's what my note was. And she kind of thinks about it and she goes, "My husband's."
Correct.
So again, we have that interruption that Mike Laveau has a formal apology. This is the announcer reading it
Mm-hmm.
though.
Yeah.
Um,
Get this,
but
Ranger fans.
yes,
I've just been handed a note.
yes. Formally apologizes for calling her a jinx. Uh, she's stunning. Uh, is it intelligent or
It goes on to say she's stunning, intelligent, and can be reached at area code
no?
212.
26, 26, and can be reached at area code
Yes.
212. And then, oh no, what's this? And what we find out, this is when Fran comes in, like so right after the reading of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Where have you been?" And she's like, "I did a strip tease and scared the hell out of him." And then she kind of paused and she's like, "That didn't sound right."
Right.
And they're like filling her in. There's an apology, but it's tied. They need a miracle. And she kind of waves that off, right? And
Mm-hmm.
at this time, uh, she's kind of sitting down and she's still wearing the red shoes from earlier. And she's taking it off. Goal, the Rangers score. And she's like, "See what can be so," and she puts her shoe back on. And then like the announcer says, "Oh, they're reviewing the play." And then she's like, "Oh, well, for the good of the city," and she takes it off. And the announcer confirms, "Yes, it's a goal."
The Rangers win.
Yes. Yes. So all of that over a red shoe.
Correct.
Is there anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, so that is the episode.
Yes.
Um, just before we get into the shticks, I would say, kind of like as you mentioned earlier, like Mr. Sheffield's not really acting like Mr. Sheffield
No.
episode.
And same thing for Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole Canasta Masta, the problem in that episode that Maxwell wanted solved was that Brighton had no interest in team sports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, except as an owner, but here he's clearly not the owner of the New York Rangers.
Nope.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So wanted to point that out. Um, and I guess we can talk more when we get into shticks about different things. But did you have anything else you wanted to kind of address before we get into the shticks?
No, I'm good talking in the shticks.
Okay. So going to favorite fashion. I feel like there's a couple of like statement pieces in this
Yes.
episode. Obviously, you mentioned when she comes down the stairs and she's wearing that like
The
shiny.
Reynolds Wrap collection dress.
Yes. Although I think that's unfair uh, observation on Cece's part.
Mm,
Um, I mean, it's not plasticky looking.
no, but it is metallic and shiny.
Yes. Yeah. Um, what were your thoughts on that dress?
Um, I guess my question is, when, if ever, does someone actually need to wear a floor-length gown on a first date?
Nope.
Because
That seems more like a like a
an event.
gala or
Yeah,
yeah, like or a wedding or something
exactly.
at a restaurant on a first date.
Exactly. Like she
So a bit
seems
over the top.
overdressed. Yeah.
Yes. But she still
Um,
looks nice
oh,
in it.
she looks great. I wouldn't wear it. Um, but like she looks fantastic. And her
Mhm.
hair's up and she just looks very polished and very put together. What did you
Mhm.
think of it?
I thought like same as you. It's overdressed for the occasion. She looks nice in it. I couldn't wear it. um, the other outfit, obviously, is what she wears to the locker room uh,
Mm-hmm.
to strip tease him to scare him to death, scare the hell out of him.
Yep.
Um, again, she looks great in it. I think I couldn't wear it, but
As a hockey fan in a past life, I would definitely wear pants with that. I'm just saying.
hmm yeah, yeah. Was there? I mean, I will point out she had at least two different robes this episode.
She
One
did.
where she comes in for breakfast the day after her date, and then a different one for when she's in the kitchen late at night. Um,
Yeah, I think the one in the kitchen late at night is white with a pattern or with
it has,
there you go. And then
hmm
I think in the morning it's pink.
and I think like flowers. I didn't
Yeah.
really write down that one, but yeah, yeah. Did you have any outfit you wanted to discuss?
What about what Fran wore to the game with the unlucky red shoes?
Oh, again, seemed out of place for the venue,
Fair.
but um, but yeah, I mean, she looked good. I'm not a big fan of the plasticky kind of look, but
Me neither, but I like the like red, black, and white. Like that's
mhm,
to me very classic
yeah.
and like looks very nice.
hmm
Um, the only other fashion, actually, I think there were two other pieces of fashion I wanted to talk about. One was Maggie's, what she was wearing when she was asking Fran, like, how come you get to go out when you're supposed to be working? She's wearing like I think a purple like shirt and then like green shimmery skirt. I did not like that combination.
Agreed.
Um, and then Maxwell wearing a hockey jersey. Like
hmm
Maxwell is an attractive man. Guys who like
hmm
hockey are typically or can be very attractive, but he did not pull the look off right because he wore the turtleneck.
Ah,
It just looked funny to me.
yeah.
So
Fair enough.
I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah.
Um, that's all I got. Do you have any
Okay.
other favorite or
Nope.
oh actually I take it back. No, that's not all I got. Um, I liked Fran's silver dress that she was wearing when Mike Laveau picked her up. It was like a V-neck, tank sleeve, form fitting. She looked
Oh,
great
like at the very beginning
at
of
the
the episode.
very, very beginning
Yeah.
when he like asked
Like he's
if
hitting
she
on
wanted.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
I like that outfit. That's all I wanted to
Yep.
say. I'm done.
Okay. So then notable New Yorkers, obviously Mike though. New York.
Mike Laveau is actually not a real person.
Oh, well then there you go. New York Rangers though is a real thing, right?
Yes. Yes. So Mike Laveau is not a real member, was not a real member of the New York Rangers. Number 7 was worn by Rod Gilbert or Gilbert, not sure. My the former hockey fan in me is like, Debbie, you should know how to pronounce that guy's last name. Um, so that's according to our friends at moviemistakes.com. The character was actually played by Anthony Mark Adabo. So he was an actor and model. The New York Rangers, yes, is a real hockey team. It's New York City's NHL team. It's one of the original 6 teams in the NHL. It is not the only hockey team in New York. Actually, the game that they were playing, it looked like they were playing against the New York Islanders, which also would not have made sense.
Okay.
Um, this is not a hockey podcast, but it would not make sense to be playing for the Stanley Cup. They would be playing against someone from the other conference.
Okay.
So
We have another Sound of Music reference when
mhm.
Val's talking about climbing every mountain, fording every stream. Um, and Gidget.
So Gidget is the title character from a book called Gidget, the Little Girl with Big Ideas, which follows a teenage girl's adventures in Malibu. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Reynolds Wrap.
An aluminum foil company.
Yep.
They have a
Sputnik.
variety of different types. Sputnik, a Soviet era space satellite, which
Mhm.
freaked
Happening
Americans
all
out.
the time. Last time Niles had a date.
According to Cece, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Which we all know was not true.
Yes.
He went
We know.
home with, we know that because he went home with someone at the party that ran through that got her thrown in jail overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that counts as a date, but we're going to say it does.
Well, she also had that affair with the former nanny. So,
No, oh, no,
um,
no, it was the housekeeper.
oh, sorry. Uh,
And
Lucky Charm.
also, I'm not sure they really dated. There was a shared look, a laugh here or there. So,
No, no, I'm talking about like Maxwell's former
oh, yes. Although
nanny.
that could have been around the time of Sputnik. We never
But they
know.
rekindled it.
Oh, okay, good point. Touche,
Uh,
touche.
Lucky Charms. They're magically delicious.
A breakfast cereal.
Yes. Um, whose catchphrase was magically delicious.
Exactly.
Let's see here. So there's numerous superstitions.
Yes, I have a lot prepared for this.
Go for it. Go for it.
So the superstitious hockey players is actually a thing. They are no hockey players are known for being a superstitious lot. And so I tracked down a couple examples. One notable one is like the playoff beards they grow. So like from the end of the, regular season until their team is eliminated from the playoffs, they don't shave. Um, there are whole superstitions about whether or not to touch the conference trophy. So basically, the way NHL playoffs work, the NHL is well, at least at this time, was divided into two separate conferences, and there'd be a 7-game series and then a 7-game series, and another 7-game series. So first round, second round, I think third round, and then so third round would be conference finals, and then it would be actually for the Stanley Cup. Um, and so there's a whole thing about, well, if I touch the conference trophy, that could be bad luck. If I don't touch it, it could also be bad luck. Good luck. Good luck figuring that out.
22.
Exactly. And so then I pulled a couple examples of some like player specific superstitions. So Patrick Waugh, he's known as one of the best goaltenders in the history of the NHL. He spoke to his goalposts before the game, or would ask them to like help him out and things like that. Glenn Hall was another, I think he was also a goaltender. He forced himself to vomit before each game to
Ugh.
improve his performance. Wayne Gretzky, known as the Great One, he apparently put baby powder on his hockey sticks. He refused to cut his hair while on the road. He put his equipment on in a specific order, and he drank beverages also in a specific order. And then a more recent example, Sidney Crosby, current captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He tapes his sticks in a very specific way, and if anyone else touches them, he has to start over and do it again. He also apparently does not call his mom on game days because the 3 times he did, he got severely injured.
Oh, wow.
So these examples come from our friends at Bleacher Report and the Hockey Writers. They're actually whole books about like hockey players being unusual or colorful characters. So there's like a whole genre if anyone is interested in learning more. Yeah.
So again, all of the different things that he even mentions. And then Carol Channing, we have another reference to.
Yeah, we haven't talked about her for a while, so I pulled a short bio. She was an American actress, comedian, dancer, and singer who starred in musicals both on Broadway and in film. She's, I would say, best known for her role in Hello, Dolly.
Mm.
That's
So
from our friends at Wikipedia.
yeah, so I think we've talked about Madison Square Garden before.
I don't know, but I basically wrote a little summary. It's the home of the New York Rangers and the New York Knicks. And they showed pictures of it in this episode.
Yes. So we have yet another reference to Barbara Streisand and The Way We Were.
Yep.
And I think you mentioned we would talk about it. Was it a different section you wanted to talk about it? Like why she was exaggeratingly like cross-eyed, maybe?
That was not what I wanted to talk about, but
Okay.
Okay.
Then
It's fine. We can continue. I will just say The Way We Were was, as you said, by Barbara Streisand. It was released as a single in 1973. And that's according to our friends at lyrics.com.
Yes. So let's see here. Do you have?
I do have some.
Well, there's the Ron Greschner. Is that a real guy?
Yes.
I'm assuming.
Yes, he is a real Canadian ice hockey player. He played from 1974 until 1990. He spent his entire career with the New York Rangers. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm. Fran references ESPN,
Yep,
the sporting channel.
yep,
Uh, we have yet another reference to Bewitched.
we do, which I feel like we talk about almost every week.
Mm-hmm. And then some more common, like mainstream superstitions, like the number 13, you know, breaking a mirror and having 7 years of bad luck. I had never heard of the red shoe thing prior to this episode.
I had not either.
I don't know if that's a thing or not. But again, hockey related, there's the reference to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's the championship. That's the championship trophy in the NHL.
Yeah. Is there any other notable New Yorker?
So when we are in the locker room, Fran says to him, "You ask yourself one question: Do you
Oh,
feel
yeah,
lucky?"
yeah, yeah.
It's a reference to Dirty. It's a
Mhm.
reference to Dirty Harry. And what is interesting is that people often think the line is, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" But it was actually, "You've got to ask yourself one question: Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?" And that's
Mhm.
according to our friends at groovyhistory.com. Um,
Yep.
Lisa Marie was referenced in the first
Oh, yes,
scene.
yes, yes,
I, Lisa Marie Presley and her marriage to Michael Jackson,
yes.
I think is the
I feel like
reference.
we've talked about that, yeah, before.
And then the last one I had was John Davidson. So when we see the announcer on the TV from the game, that was actually John Davidson, who was actually the New York Rangers broadcaster.
Oh,
Before that, he was a Canadian ice hockey player. He then became an ice hockey executive. He was a longtime hockey broadcaster for the Rangers. He's currently the president of hockey operations and an alternate governor for the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
cool. Okay. And that's it.
I think so.
Okay. So then going on to Yiddish Cup.
Okay, so first off, you all know I'm going to say this: shrimp are not kosher. They're treif.
Mm-hmm.
They are not fish with scales and fins. Therefore, they are not kosher. So her excitement about the seafood platter, it seemed unrealistic to me. Um, when she is in the New York Rangers locker room, she makes a comment about the stunk in here just hit her. That's a very unpleasant, pungent smell.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, and I think most notably, she makes the comment about, "Gee, who knew I'd get time off just for dating a famous athlete? Guess that rules out Jewish men," or something like that. She is not correct. There are actually a number of very famous Jewish athletes. Um, for example, in baseball, so I'm going to be dating myself a little, or dating them a little bit. Hank Greenberg and Sandy Koufax were both Jewish. That's according to our friends at Bleacher Report. Um, Switching to women's basketball, Sue Bird is considered one of the best uh, basketball players in the WNBA. She is Jewish. That's according to our friends at Bleacher Report. In turning to hockey, which is more pertinent to this episode, Jeff Halperin, Marty Turco, Matthew Schneider, and Michael Camilleri are all Jewish. And that is according to our friends at ranker.com. And finally, I will say that according to our friends at the Atlanta Jewish Times, the 2021 to 2022 season had a record number of Jewish hockey players in the NHL. So I just wanted to mention that. So Fran would not be totally out of luck if she were looking for a handsome Jewish athlete.
Yes.
So,
Okay. So 90s nostalgia then?
the boombox
Mm-hmm.
that she brings into the Rangers locker room.
Yes, the large cameras used at the hockey game because we kind of see it as they're going in.
Yes. The New York City skyline that you mentioned with the Twin
Yeah.
Towers.
Yep. Exactly. Um, and I feel like today, if there was a similar kind of situation, it would be more like all over social media.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It'd be immediate too, not like the paper the next morning. You know what I mean?
Mhm. It'd be all over Twitter and Instagram and yeah. Um, let's see. So the New York Rangers did actually win the Stanley Cup in 1994. So this episode is a couple years too late.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was amusing. Um, old cars,
Yeah. And then I'm kind of out.
me too.
Okay. How about some future fun?
So, believe it or not, Fran does not actually give up on men entirely. She,
What?
I know, we're shocked, right? You thought she was gonna live like a nun, um, and ford every stream, etc., climb every mountain. She continues her antics to try to meet Mr. Right, including she accompanies her mother to synagogue to meet the new handsome single cantor. She takes a cruise because a psychic told her that she would dance on water with the man she's going to marry. She plans a trip to Niagara Falls, which apparently is the engagement capital of the world, trying to procure a proposal. And also, she gets engaged to Brighton's French tutor.
What?
It doesn't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the only other piece of future fun I have for us is this is not the only sports game that Fran attends. She asks Maxwell to get basketball tickets for her to give to her father for his birthday. And he does. Maxwell does get her the tickets and they're comped. But then Morty stands her up because and sends Sylvia in his stead, and eventually Sylvia comes clean with the reason why. Morty didn't want to accept the gift from Maxwell because he hated to see Fran wasting her young life on a man who was never going to marry her.
Aw.
This leads Fran to quit her job and Maxwell to get her back by calling her by her given name, Fran.
Aw.
So, yeah, that that's the future fun I have for us today.
Okay. So then now episode ratings, and this week is my turn, I believe.
Oh, excellent.
So, um, like a little torn because I feel like there's inconsistencies in the characters. I don't like, for instance, that uh Maxwell so gleefully threw darts at Fran's picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's not great. Um, there's also like the comments he made, like you're eating as if you don't have a boyfriend. I'm not a fan of that comment. Um, I don't know, but then I am amused by her strip tease to scare the hell out of him. That was very
Mm-hmm.
amusing. So I think I'm gonna come out with a 4. How about you?
I'm giving it a 5.
Okay.
You're right. You're right. There are um inconsistencies and incongruities. You're right. Maxwell and Brighton do not act like themselves. And there also that line about someone eating like they don't have a boyfriend doesn't really make sense to me because like I would think I think typically someone would be eating more once they had a boyfriend because they had someone who already liked them and loved them, etc. So like
Mhm.
who cares? Um, but what do I know? Um, I didn't like Maxwell manipulating Fran into continuing to date this guy she was not interested in.
Mhm.
Um, which actually that was something I wanted to comment on. Like, she acknowledges that it seems like she's leading this guy on, but then she willfully says, "Love you, Mike," which
Yeah.
is not super, but still doesn't weigh out that all of my concerns and complaints about the show do not weigh out. Oh, do not cancel out the fact that this is a
Outweigh. Yeah.
fun episode to watch. As I said, I was a hockey fan in a past life, so this was, a lot of fun for me to watch. I This is an episode that I watch again and again and again because I like it. So it gets a 5 in my book.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Um, I don't think so.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 71, That's Midlife.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.